My name's Elisa, I'm 29, and I live in Dubai, a city that never sleeps, where everything shines except people's hearts. I came here chasing my career in photography, capturing faces, lights, and moments for magazines that only cared about perfection. I was surrounded by luxury, but I always felt empty, like something real was missing. And then, one afternoon at an aviation event, I met him. Ethan Miller, an American pilot, tall, calm, with those kind of eyes that make you forget where you are. He looked straight at me and said, "You steal souls with your camera." I laughed, nervous, a little shy, and said, "Maybe I just capture what's already alive." I didn't know it then, but that one line started everything. After that, we kept running into each other, sometimes by accident, sometimes maybe not. Coffee breaks turned into long walks by Dubai Marina, small talks turned into confessions under desert skies. He was confident, but I could feel a sadness under his smile. He once told me about his mother, how she died when he was 16, and how he still carried that pain like a secret weight. I remember one night. The beach was quiet, the waves whispering like they knew our story. Ethan looked at me and said softly, "If I could stop time, I'd stop it here with you." And I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, and something in me shifted. I felt safe, seen, loved. Maybe for the first time. Our connection grew. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was soft, like music that only two hearts can hear. Sometimes he'd hold my hand and say nothing. Sometimes his lips would brush mine, gentle, hesitant, like a promise we were both too scared to say out loud. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a story without words. But happiness never stays long, does it? One morning, he told me he had to leave. An emergency. Back to the US. He held my face in his hands and said, "I'll come back for you, I swear." And just like that, he was gone. At first, there were calls, messages, plans. But slowly, the spaces grew longer. His voice became distant, and my days became quieter. I'd stare at my phone for hours, waiting for that familiar, "Hey, you there?" But it never came. Weeks turned into months. And then silence. I threw myself into work, but every photo I took felt hollow, like color without light. One evening, I found the small package he'd left for me before leaving. I opened it, and inside was a plane ticket to New York one way. And a note that said, "Come find me." I remember my hands shaking. My heart felt like it was on fire. I didn't know if I was crazy or brave, maybe both. But I packed my camera, closed my apartment door, and booked the next flight. Because sometimes, when love calls you across the world, you don't ask why. You just go. When I landed in New York, I thought I'd find him. I really believed I would just walk out of that airport and somehow he'd be there, waiting for me, smiling like he used to. But he wasn't. I searched everywhere, his airline, his apartment, his friends. No one had answers. Some said he'd been in an accident. Others whispered he was dead. I refused to believe any of them. I couldn't. Because when you've loved someone that deeply, you feel when they're gone. And I didn't feel that. I felt distance, not death. So I stayed. I took small photography jobs, weddings, fashion shoots, anything to pay rent, and spent my nights watching the city lights blur through my window. New York is full of people, but somehow I never felt more alone. Every siren, every plane flying overhead, it reminded me of him. A whole year passed that way. One long, sleepless, waiting year. And then one night, something happened. An email. Just a random notification on my phone from a Paris art gallery. They said they were hosting an exhibition of my work. My old work. The photos I'd taken back in Dubai. I didn't understand how that was even possible until I saw the name at the bottom. Ethan Miller. My heart stopped. And below his name, 3 words. "Meet me in Paris." I didn't even pack properly. I just booked the flight and went. And when I walked into that gallery in Paris, I saw him. He was standing by one of my photographs, the one I'd taken of him at the desert, sunlight behind him, his eyes half closed like he was dreaming. He looked different, thinner, quieter. A scar crossed his cheek, his hair a little grayer. But it was him. And when he saw me, he smiled. That same, soft, impossible smile. He said, "You found me." I didn't know whether to hug him or hit him. I cried instead. For a long time. We sat in a small cafe that night, rain tapping against the window, steam fogging up the glass. That's when he told me everything. The accident was real. But what came after was darker. He'd uncovered something illegal inside his company, a network smuggling rare aircraft parts through military channels. When he tried to report it, they came after him. He disappeared to protect me. He changed his name, lived in hiding, always one step away from being found. He said, "If I had called you, they would have found you too." And you know what? I believed him. But believing didn't erase the pain. For a while, we just sat there, between truth and silence. Then he reached across the table, touched my hand, and whispered, "I never stopped loving you." And everything inside me, all that anger, loneliness, waiting, it broke. And it melted. We spent weeks in Paris, like ghosts of our old selves, wandering through narrow streets, laughing at stupid things, taking photos again. It felt safe. Real. Like the world was slowly forgiving us. One night, by the River Seine, under the golden lights, he kissed me. And in that moment, it was like time folded back, like Dubai, like the first time all over again. Only this time, I knew how fragile love really was, how quickly it could disappear. But I also knew something else. I'd rather live one honest day with him than a lifetime pretending I didn't love him. So I stayed. Through the rain, the fear, the uncertainty. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone, even when the world says you shouldn't. After Paris, we came back to New York, this time, not as strangers, not as memories, but as two people trying to rebuild what life had once stolen from us. We found a small apartment in Brooklyn. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. The kind of place that smells like coffee in the morning and hope at night. Ethan started helping me with my photography work. He had a good eye, always finding beauty where others didn't. Together, we opened a little gallery, Wings and Light. It was simple. Half the walls were covered with my photographs, the other half with small models of airplanes he built by hand. People came, smiled, left. And for the first time in years, life felt steady. He'd wake me up early, make breakfast, play old jazz on the radio. Sometimes I'd catch him just staring at me while I worked, and when I asked why, he'd say, "Just making sure you're real." And we'd laugh. Because after everything we'd survived, even laughter felt sacred. We started planning a future, small things, quiet dreams. A trip back to Dubai, maybe, a house near the ocean. But life has this cruel way of testing love, right when you start to breathe again. One morning, Ethan collapsed. Just like that. No warning. At the hospital, the doctors told us it was cancer. Aggressive. Late stage. I remember sitting there in silence, watching him smile, pretending it was okay, while my world fell apart, piece by piece. He squeezed my hand and said, "Hey, don't cry. We've beaten worse things." But we both knew this was different. The next few months became everything. Every sunrise, every heartbeat, every small breath, precious beyond words. I watched him lose weight, lose strength, but never his humor, never his light. He used to say, "Love isn't about how long you have. It's about how deeply you live the time you get." And God, he lived deeply. We'd sit on the rooftop at night, wrapped in blankets, watching the city glow below us. He'd tell me stories from his flying days, clouds that looked like mountains, storms that danced like music. And sometimes, he'd rest his head on my shoulder, whispering, "You're my calm, Elisa." And I'd whisper back, "You're my reason." One snowy morning, I'll never forget, he woke up early, called my name softly, and said, "Promise me something." I held his hand. "Anything." He said, "Promise me you'll keep flying." And I did. I promised. That night, he slept peacefully. And by morning he was gone. No sound, no warning. Just stillness. The kind of silence that breaks you slowly, quietly. I remember sitting beside him, holding his hand, tracing the lines of his palm. It felt cold, but familiar, like holding a piece of forever. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just whispered, "I'll keep flying, Ethan. I will." After he was gone, I couldn't step into the gallery for weeks. His tools were still there, his notes, his half-finished plane model. But then one day I did. And I decided to continue, not just for him, but because love that deep doesn't deserve to end in silence. I expanded our gallery. I started a small foundation for underprivileged kids who wanted to learn photography or flying. And I called it the Ethan Project. Years have passed now. Sometimes I travel the world, taking pictures, meeting people, telling stories. And in every face I capture, I see a little piece of him. There's a quote I keep framed in the gallery, written in his handwriting. Love never dies. It just learns to fly higher. And whenever people ask me if I still miss him, I smile. Because how can you miss the air you breathe? He's here, in every light I capture, in every plane that crosses the sky, in every heartbeat that still believes in something pure. If there's one thing I've learned from it all, it's this. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It just changes form. Sometimes it becomes silence. Sometimes memory. And sometimes it becomes you. So yes, Ethan, I'm still flying, just like I promised.